Hey everyone, Vicky Magic here with Wake Up to What Matters. And today I have the amazing Carren Smith. Welcome, Carren.
Thank you for having me. What a treat.
Absolute pleasure. So Carren, I was sharing with you just before off air that, I really wanted to speak to people who were struggling with overwhelm and anxiety and stress and fear. And, at the end of the day, pretty much all of us at sometimes do struggle with, if not some of those, all of those things. So I just wanted to ask you for your take on, let's start with fear. How do you overcome fear? Do you ever have it?
Oh, wow. How do I overcome fear? Dear, oh dear. Well, I think the first thing my life has really taught me is that fear is always something to be questioned. So for me, whenever fear is present, I don't take it on face value. And I also recognize that my languaging determines a lot about how quickly and how deeply my body and my brain embrace that fear. So instead of me saying I am scared or I am frightened, I will just say, fear is present. Like I will say, fun is present, or enthusiasm is present. So I try to separate myself from the emotions so that then I don't get caught up in the belief that I am the emotion. Whereas if I say I am happy or I am fearful, then I become the emotion. And the brain doesn't actually understand the difference between that association. So I have to actually instruct the brain to know I am not that. That just happens to be present. There's my little teddy bear and my Sophie. My two little office managers for the day. So that's the first thing I'll do is I'll instruct my brain that I am not that. That's just what's present. And then again, like I say, my life has taught me that fear is always something to be questioned, because I'll usually only be fearful if I'm doing something or I'm in a situation that's potentially unfamiliar, or it's outside of my comfort zone, or it involves me accessing parts of myself that have traditionally self-sabotaged. Like taking giant leaps in my business, or buying a new house, or making a really big decision that could potentially have a massive cost, and I don't have the foresight to see the end game. Sometimes we can know what the end result is going to be before we make a decision on something, and sometimes we have no idea. And it's those things that tend to catch me.
Yeah.
With those moments of fear. But I find, I get less fearful about things outside. And I'm more, when fear does strike, it's more about what's going on for me on the inside. So it gives me something to work with. It gives me the ability to really question it and go, why is fear present under these circumstances? What is missing? What have I not seen?
Yeah.
Because it's usually simply because I'm either not prepared or I don't know and I really want to know.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah. So, I know your story, but a lot of our listeners might not. I'd really like to invite you, if it's okay with you, just to share, sort of some of the people that might be listening might be in kind of a little bit of a bad headspace right now. And they might be listening to this to, get inspiration to help themselves out of that. And I know that you personally have potentially been in that very same space. So, in fact, have been. So can you sort of share a little bit about that and your story?
Yeah, definitely. So I usually tell my story sort of from midway in my life rather than going back to the day I was born.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess the real changes and challenges in my life occurred around 2000, 2001, 2002, where, you know, I was living in Sydney and I was in a beautiful relationship that did have some turmoil to it. There's no mistaking that. But it was a beautiful relationship, and I was very much head over heels. And we were together for about 8 years. And my partner, Greg, he had his own stuff going on, which of course I never, or I shouldn't say of course, but which I never saw. To me, I just saw him as this strong, silent tower of a man, which unfortunately is part of what brought our relationship to an end. And what brought our relationship to the final end was him taking his life. So he committed suicide on the 14th of October, 2001. And our relationship was probably struggling from about July, where we were in a bit of trouble. We certainly weren't over by any means, but we were, you know, and every relationship has them. We were in those really rough patches.
Yeah.
Now, he took his life as a response to that. And it was something I never saw coming. And when he left his suicide message, and the way that he took his life was very much aimed toward me, and his suicide message was for me, letting me know that it was about me and because of me, and that he would be there watching over me, you know, forever. And that was a responsibility that I shouldered very willingly, because I saw the pain that I'd caused his family, which still to this day I find almost unbearable to speak about. His friends, him, me, all of it I felt was my fault, because I just didn't see the pain that he had. I just saw the implosion of our relationship, which I laid squarely at his feet. So that took me on a very slippery slope toward my own suicidal journey, where I felt that I had a very big price to pay, and that it was only fair and it was only right that my life would end, simply for, you know, one, me being back in my rightful place with him, two, my parents and family not having to live with me, who was the walking dead anyway, and then me also paying a price for what I had done. Wow. So on his anniversary, on his 12-month anniversary, I'd made my decision that I was going to take my life. I was so disassociated from reality that I had no comprehension that what I was about to do was going to do to my family the same thing that I was experiencing. But when a person is on that path of self-destruction, there are many cries for help throughout that time. And my nature was never to cry for help, because my nature was to go from his suicide to guilty to my suicide in the blink of an eye. So for me, there wasn't cries for help. There was just a constant searching for when was going to be the right time to bring an end. And I decided that his 12-month anniversary was going to be my time. My best friend Jodie and another girlfriend, Charmaine, came with me because I decided to go to Bali. What I did have enough comprehension around was to not take my life so that any of my friends or family would find me, like we had with Greg. So I wanted to go to Bali, have my note, telling everybody that I love them, but I just couldn't be here. But the interesting thing was I couldn't write the note because I was so disassociated. I really didn't have any love. I had no love for anyone, and I couldn't feel any love coming back in. I was completely empty. I was just devoid. And I think that a person is actually quite a danger to themselves when they reach that stage. And from a psychological point of view, we've since gone on to find that that's the case.
Yeah, of course.
So I went to Bali on the 12th of October, 2002, and your listeners are probably starting to hear little snaps around that. That was the date of the 2002 Bali bombing. We were in the Sari Club that night, and the bomb went off at about 11:30, and my two girlfriends were both blown forwards into the bar, and they were both killed instantly. I was blown backwards onto a dance floor, and the entire left side of my skull was crushed in. but I survived. So getting myself home from Bali was an adventure on its own. Finding out that, you know, Jodie and Charmaine weren't coming home was an adventure. And, you know, living with the fact that I was responsible for the death of 3 people was a burden that, you know, I guess I had to learn to shoulder while I believed I was responsible for their deaths too.
My goodness.
So, you know, what comes along with that is just a whole world of anxiety, a whole world of just, you know, roller coaster depression. And to go from this to suicidal like that, you know, it's been and I can't say, like, I look at myself now and I can say I'm very much on the other side of it, which is why I can tell the story so matter-of-factly. But I can't say that it was a quick journey. And it definitely wasn't an easy journey, but it was a journey that really forced me to know myself and heal myself. Because my dad told me a beautiful story about the butterflies and caterpillars. And he said, you know, how the caterpillars turn into butterflies in those chrysalis. And he said to me, you know, no one can help that butterfly once it's gone through its trauma inside the chrysalis of transformation. No one can help it. It has to break free. And, you know, the transformation is not the fight of its life. It's breaking out of the chrysalis. That's the fight of its life. And that was what my dad was trying to get me to see, was that Bali and Greg's suicide, that wasn't the fight. That was the transformation. The fight was to become a better version of myself because of the transformation, rather than having that transformation transform me into something less. The fight of my life was to have that transformation transform me into something more. And that was thanks to my dad and my mum and my brother and my sister. They helped me to always reach for that more. And, you know, now I sit inside of my skin bag and, you know, I think I know who I am, and I'm very clear about what my role here is. And it's not always human. Sometimes it feels to me like it's quite spiritual. But I don't think a person can go through an experience like I've been through without meeting, you know, your maker. And I honestly feel, and I know that I came face to face with my maker. And I got given a second chance. So for me, I feel that there's an invitation to be a way shower. There's an invitation to share the road, the journey, and also what's on the other side, to be the light.
And so share that with us as well. Like, what is your now purpose? What is your journey? What is your transformation? You know, the transformed you. What are you up for? What's your, you know, what's your vision, and how are you living into that?
So when I first started to heal, you know, enough to be able to look at my life, I decided that I wanted to become a professional speaker, because I thought, and a counselor, because I thought I had the ability to help people, and I'd been in a background of accounting and real estate. So I thought, well, you know, I want to do something that makes the world a better place because of what I've been through. So I invested a lot of money in myself, and I traveled around the world learning how to speak. And then I, you know, embarked on my own speaking career and developed a whole host of training programs where I was teaching people how to speak. So there were other people out there, you know, like you, Vicky, who have incredible stories.
9 years ago, I came to your little class in
And then remember when we went to Cessnock and we did that mindset mastery together? Oh gosh, it feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? So much has happened. But so that was what my life became. It became about running courses for the general public, and it became about standing on massive stages for organizations around the world. And It was all about, you know, sharing with people that if I can go through this, and I'm just a normal person, we can go through anything. We can go through a divorce, a bankruptcy, we can go through losing a child. We can. It's just about helping people to see the resilience of the nature of being human.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's been an incredible ride and an outstanding journey. And I think still to this day, I'm still Australia's most experienced speaker. I've got 3,327 professional speaking gigs under my belt.
Wow.
So yeah. And I'm still
28, we're going to count this.
Yeah. Absolutely. So as soon as COVID comes to an end and I can get back out there, I'm so excited. You know, it's just one of those things that motivates and inspires me and makes me feel alive. So so I'm still speaking.
So if we were, you know, sort of in this moment today, speaking to someone that was still in that hole,
yes,
you know, clearly what I heard from you is that they have to actually, and did I hear this? So correct me if I'm wrong, but they do actually have to transform on their own. But what could we do to kind of, you know, if we know somebody, you know, if anybody's listening, or if we know somebody, like, well, how can we help them help themselves?
It's such a beautiful question, and I'm so glad that you asked it. I think one of the most important things is to let the person sit in the suffering, is to let the person sit in the pain. All too quickly, we want to take the pain away from the person, one, because we hate to see anybody that we love suffer, or anybody that we care about suffering. But also, when we watch somebody suffering, because of the way that the brain is configured, we suffer ourselves, and it becomes a very disconcerting and a discomforting feeling to watch somebody suffering and feel helpless.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the minute we hug somebody, or we try to make them feel better, or we try to distract them, what it does is it invalidates their experience, and it causes two things to happen. So when we hug somebody and we say, it's okay, you're going to be fine, I'm right here, you're totally fine. And I don't know how many times I've done that. So we're all, you know, we all do it. But when we do that, we stop the person in the middle of the process of going through hell. So they stay in the fire of the hell. Whereas if you're going through hell, the last thing you want to do is stop, you know, you want to keep going. So when we comfort somebody, it stops the process. The other thing that it could do is it causes them to feel invalidated, which then makes them hold on to their suffering, which was the case for me. I had to hold on to my suffering even more, with even more conviction, because somebody was telling me not to feel that way. They were telling me to feel differently. They were telling me not to sit and cry. They were telling me to go roller skating, or they were telling me to come out for lunch, or they were telling me to have a glass of wine. All that did was it invalidated the existing experience for me, which then made me hold on to it even more, because they were trying to take it away from me. Now, both of those reactions from a person suffering are unhealthy. And if we can think of it from the perspective, if we're a support person, think of it from the perspective of a wave in the ocean. The wave builds and builds and builds, and then all of the water, and sucks all of the water back up as the wave begins to crash. If you try and stop that wave, one, you can't. But if you try to stop that wave, all of that force, it doesn't just dissolve, it has to go somewhere. So if we encourage people to feel better by distracting them or comforting them, it forces the pressure, it forces the, you know, all the force of that wave back down into the person. And that's destructive at best. Like a wave, it peaks and then it always comes to the shore. It always burns itself out. And all the different stages that a person goes through when they're grieving, or they're fearful, or they're anxious, there are many different emotional stages amongst those emotions. And they will all burn themselves out if the person has the ability to sit in the suffering, to sit in the pain, and we sit next to them and then we say, I may not understand what you're going through because I haven't been through it myself, but I'll tell you one thing for sure. I'm not leaving you, and we are going to sit here together until you're done. You are not leaving this room until you've cried every tear, and I'm not leaving you either. and we encourage the person to cry. We encourage the person to feel it. We encourage them to write about it. They speak, we write. You know, whatever it is, don't leave the person alone. Stay with them so that they feel supported, but not, and I know that comforted, it's not really the right word, but, you know, the hugging and the,
Yeah.
you're okay.
Yeah.
So the best thing I can encourage people to do is shower them with love.
Yeah.
Let them know you love them unconditionally. Don't leave their side, but don't try and take it away from them. It's theirs to experience, and there's greatness on the other side that they can't see. But what a miraculous experience to witness somebody else's transformation from grief to greatness, or from suffering to, you know, superb. What a wonderful gift that is, to be able to partner somebody through that.
Yeah. So definitely, you know that we can't, you know, help the butterfly out of the cocoon. Otherwise, actually, we're going
the wings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and I love that as an analogy too, because I think it shows people, you know, we can't actually walk those steps for that person. They have to walk those steps. We can stand beside them and we can, you know, obviously be there, but we can't do the work. Yeah.
That's so true. It's so
and
true.
what would you say, you know, to somebody who, you know, is, and I have a lot of people exactly like this that I work with, that are just so stressed out all the time. They, you know, there's so much to do and so little time. What would you say to those people? How do they, you know, take that stress to calmness?
Breathe.
Yeah.
I think my answer for that, and for myself, you know, I'm still very human, so I go through those very stressed times too.
Yeah.
Again, well, not again. I think one of the biggest keys is being able to be present. I have this saying: we're either here or we're in the imagination. Because if we're worrying about the future, or we're thinking about the past, so worrying about the future is the cause of all anxiety, regardless of the scale that a person is suffering with anxiety. So fear of the future or anticipation of the future is the cause of anxiety. So we're either thinking about the future or thinking about the past, which is all in our imagination.
Yeah.
Or we're here, where there's silence and there's presence and there's being and there's potency and there's opportunity and there's action and there's rest, or there's nothing. But in the present, there's power. In the imagination, it's powerless. And I think that the imagination is one of the greatest gifts that we have, because it's actually our tool for creativity. But unfortunately, we haven't learned to use our tools for good. We've learned to use our tools for destruction, I think. And it's almost, you know, there's that scale, you know. On one side, humans feel like we're immortal. We never think about our own end. We feel like we're immortal. But then on the other end of the scale, we're always self-sabotaging. We're always in self-destruction mode. We're always doing things like, look at us globally right now. It's horrendous, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just varying degrees of that. So I think that if we were able to use our imagination for creativity, for creating the kind of life and creating the kind of experience we want, then our imagination is being used purposefully and right. But unfortunately, we don't get taught these things when we're at school. We don't learn how to use this incredible, you know, piece of furniture. We don't learn how to use it. And, you know, it's not until we get to these sorts of experiences where we begin to question in our lives and go, shit, man, you know, really? Did I get it right? Have I got it right? I don't think I have. I haven't got my answers yet.
Yeah.
I'm still searching. I'm still looking. And I think, you know, certainly for me, in terms of my role now, is to really help people to figure out how to call off the search and how to find the way
from within.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last question for you today is, I really want to invite you, and so it's kind of not really a question, invitation, to share, you know, if somebody said to you, what's one thing that made the biggest difference, or that could make the biggest difference for somebody to hear, what do you think that one thing might be?
So I'm just going to say it. It's know thyself and to thine own self be true. If you're to know yourself, you can love yourself. But if we don't know ourselves, we don't know what we're capable of. We don't know what's in there. And a lot of people will say, oh, you've just got to go inside. You've got to go inside. And there's very little conversation about how the hell does someone do that? So going inside, how? Sit in silence. Put yourself into a situation where you are robbed of sensory distraction, and just do it for 2 minutes a day where you're not distracted by anything else and you have to be with your own thoughts. And then begin to pay attention to your thoughts. Begin to watch them. Don't buy into anything, but just begin to watch them. Write them down if you want to. They're pointless, because what we'll find is that when we do sit with ourselves and we listen to what's going on up here, you'll see that just about everything that you say to yourself is pointless. It doesn't progress your story or your life in any way. All the brain does is it just repeats what's already happened and what it already knows. It doesn't actually progress you. So be with yourself, know yourself, listen, pay attention to what's going on between your two ears. Don't do anything, but just pay attention to it. And in the simple act of paying attention to it, it begins to quiet. And I'm not talking about meditation. I'm just talking about actually sitting in sensory deprivation, like even go to those magnesium float tanks, or sit in a room where you've got no computer and no phone, just something where you're not distracted. And that's the first step to get to know yourself. And then once you start to feel that the voice starts to calm and it's not so frantically trying to get your attention, once the voice starts to calm, because it's, you know, when you give yourself that 2 minutes a day, you're giving yourself the attention that the brain is screaming for all the time. And then the brain starts to quiet. And then you'll start to see who you really are. And then take yourself out and play with people and just play with your new toys and see. If you get a gut instinct to eat chocolate, go and eat it. If you get a gut instinct to climb a mountain, go climb it. And don't say no to yourself.
Yeah.
And then just take yourself out and play with getting to know and respond to and saying yes to your heart's deepest desires. And then to thine own self be true will automatically happen. And then I think you're really on the way to healing, being a light for others, never compromising, always feeling complete and whole. And the natural condition of the human is love. So, you know, when I say never compromising, I just simply mean you're never compromising the fact that you just love on legs.
Love on legs. I love that. Well, that sounds like a good place for us to finish up today.
Thank you.
I just want to say from the absolute bottom of my heart, thank you so, so much for taking the time today to share with us. And I know that there's been some absolute words of wisdom in there that somebody needed to hear today. So thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate having you on today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute treat.
Thanks a million. Love you lots.
Mwah.